I'll just give everybody a chance to come on. And whilst we are waiting, as I say, just want to say a big thank you for everybody for joining today, and a big thank you to our panelists for giving up their time to share their experiences and answer some of your questions. We put these events together. This is the second of our online events. Some of you might have joined us for our Q&A with Oliver Barnett from London Clinic of Nutrition last week. And thank you very much if you did come along. As per that, we in the autumn last year, we put out a feeler about the kind of online events that Lyme patients would like to see. The Q&A and this patient panel discussion were two of the most popular options. And we wanted to be able to provide some content that people can engage with, find interesting, informative, especially during these kind of dark winter months when, you know, we're in the middle of pandemic and there's not much to do. Just a brief kind of disclaimer about the event, just something I think it's really important to kind of say to set expectation and let you guys know what we'll be able to do and what this event is for. So, you know, we're here today for interest and information purposes only. So everything that we discussed today, none of it is an endorsement for anybody or by the charity of any particular organisation or route of treatment. We're not able to answer any questions regarding medical advice or make recommendations for you on what treatment you should follow or what doctors you should see. The panelists are here today to discuss their experiences with you. It's an opportunity to connect and hear from others about their journeys, but any decisions that you make about your health and the treatment that you undertake should be done so with the input of a medical or relevantly qualified professional. And that's based on your own individual circumstances, which might be different to those. So I just wanted to let that know, and I'll just pop that in the chat for anybody that's interested. So we haven't got much time tonight, and I know you guys are keen to hear from the people in question. So I'm now going to invite the guys to introduce themselves. So Hannah, we're going to start with you, if that's okay. So yeah. Could you just kind of introduce yourself to everybody watching and just give a brief overview of your journey if you can. I know that's difficult, but just, you know, where and when you think you caught Lyme, how long it took for you to be diagnosed, and just kind of a brief overview of your treatment approaches to Lyme so far.
Yeah, sure. Hi everybody, I'm Hannah Green, and I think I probably, looking back on what I know now, I probably contracted Lyme disease in about 1996 in America, in a Lyme hotspot. I didn't actually get classic Lyme symptoms until about early 2006, although looking back, I had joint problems and niggling things that, you know, I didn't really address at the time. And then I got worse and worse until I ended up basically bedridden for 2 years at the end of, well, I was bedbound at the end of 2012. And I was in Australia at the time. And that's when I met a doctor that actually had Lyme disease himself. So he recognised the symptoms. It was totally by accident. I'd seen 10 doctors in 2 different countries, and no one knew what was wrong. The last 2 years I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, but I knew there was more to it, so I just kept pushing. So this doctor just recognised the symptoms, recommended I went on to about 4 or 5 types of antibiotics. So this was at the end of 2012. My instincts said no, I want to try natural. So I did research and used basically the practitioners that I had locally to me in Australia. And I had all the classic symptoms at that point, but it was pretty severe. I was bedbound. I had, it was in my heart, it was in my brain, it was just through my body. I had private PCR testing, bioresonance testing and ART muscle testing, and those results all matched. So with my natural treatment plan, I was on that for about 11 months and got to symptom free. And I've been off all treatment and in full remission for 7 years now. That's amazing. So it was like a 6-year struggle to find out what it was. That's when I was very ill for the 6 years. Yeah.
Thanks, Hannah. And Arlene, coming to you next on my screen, going clockwise. It's actually your son Marcus, isn't it, that has struggled with Lyme disease, and it's really great to have the view of somebody as a carer you know, a family member of somebody with chronic Lyme. So would you mind taking us just briefly through those kind of same points about Marcus's journey?
Sure. Glad to be here. So yes, a bit different. It's not me, it's my son. And when he was in his teens, he climbed the Highlands of Scotland as part of Duke of Edinburgh. Between 15 and 17 years old, we reckon that he's been bitten at some point. We knew he'd been bitten once or twice. Can't pin it down, but we didn't understand anything about Lyme disease back then. He then went off to university at age 18 and within 3 weeks just couldn't get out of his bed. And at that point, we knew something was really wrong. It was Aberdeen, I'm in Edinburgh, so I encouraged him to go to the GP who diagnosed depression. I'm actually a pharmacist by background, and you would think that would help, but it hasn't along the way, I have to be honest, because I suspected it wasn't depression. I knew somebody who had Lyme disease 2 years previously, and I recognised the symptoms. So to short circuit the story, he ended up having to come home. We got the NHS test done and it came back negative. And I believed the test because at that point I had no idea about the lack of sensitivity in the testing. So we then spent 3 years puzzled going around the wilderness of psychiatrists, psychologists. He saw them all because everyone believed it was a psychiatric type of condition. Until one day the psychologist said to me, Arlene, I'm with you. I believe that this is physiological. In other words, it's something wrong in his body. It's not his mind. And I felt so relieved, almost elated. But that was only the problem beginning, because even when we saw an infectious disease consultant at that point, we weren't able to get any confirmation. They weren't willing to do any further testing like Western blot. And they said, Marcus, you'll just have to accept it's chronic fatigue and learn to live with it. And I think that's probably was a low point for me, because having worked in the NHS all my life, I just felt that we were so let down at that point and we were on our own. And so at that point, we began a journey into private medical care. And I know, Rosie, you might want to ask a bit more later. So at that point, Marcus has now been ill and bedbound for probably three and a half years. And so we went into private care where he began to undergo diagnosis, discovered that Hashimoto's was an issue. There was an autoimmune condition, and treatment of that, it meant he actually got a lot better for the first 6 months. But then he deteriorated again, and it was the same symptoms as back at university. So we knew there was more wrong. And at that point, the test for Lyme showed that it was highly likely to be Lyme. So we've gone through a journey of traditional treatment, and happy to talk a wee bit more about that later. He's a lot better, but he's still pretty much room bound and bed bound at this point in time.
Okay, thanks, Arlene. So Kurt, coming to you next, can you give us a little kind of overview of your Lyme journey? You know, when you were diagnosed, how long you think you'd had Lyme for, you know, and your kind of key symptoms and the treatment, the kind of overall treatment approaches that you've had so far.
Yeah, of course. So I got diagnosed in 2016, but I started to get very, very sick in 2012, which I was in Australia at that time, and I was unable to walk. The pain was just unbearable, which I don't need to go into. You'll probably all understand. And I was spending thousands and thousands of pounds in Australia because the doctors were just basically ignoring me and saying, I went and had like MRI scans on my brain, MRI scans on all my legs, like so many times, and it was just like, there's nothing there, so there's nothing wrong with you. So it got so bad that my dad said, you're gonna have to come home. So I came home to the UK, back home, and moved in with my dad. And then we spent about 4 years then trying to find out what it was. With not much luck. I was actually a friend of a friend who said, turn on the TV, Kurt, because it was actually John Caudwell who was talking about Lyme on one of the news channels. And as soon as I Googled it, I just knew in my heart what it was. Because when you've been ill for so long and no one believes you and stuff, when you see all those things, like all those hundreds of symptoms where no one else believes that you can have that many, I knew straight away. Got tested on NHS, came back negative. All the doctors told me I'm crazy, tried to give me antidepressants. I got home, I was just on a mission then. I got on Google and I Googled private testing, and I went to Breakthrough and got tested, and I was very highly positive. And then they wanted to do a lot of antibiotics, and the treatment was very, very expensive. And something just thought, until I go into this, let's do a bit of research and speak to some people, because I was so new to all this. So I kind of got in touch with people, got onto forums, started reading about certain things. And then I came across someone doing bioresonance treatment at this time in Liverpool, with amazing results. So I contacted him, went down there, started doing that, read about the Cowden protocol, started doing that. And then luckily I'm a chef, so I read about how important the diet is. And obviously it was a massive can of worms that opened up to me then, because in cooking kitchens, we eat loads of sugar and we eat loads of dairy and meat and all those things. So I started to do those 3 basically very strictly. And in about 9 to 10 months, I got about 60 to 70% better, which was incredible, from being in absolute agony. And then my friend booked me a flight to go to Australia, which I should have never gone, but I did, because I thought,
a beautiful thing.
yeah, I know. My dad told me not to go, so it's I'm trying to forget about it, but it would have been a lot easier if I hadn't. But yeah, I went to Australia, and basically the flight absolutely destroyed me. I spent 3 weeks in Australia, the whole time in bed, bedbound, couldn't move my arms, couldn't even eat. Then I flew all the way back, and I spent 6 months bedbound. And I was very, very suicidal then, I'll be honest, and I didn't want to live anymore. And I just said I need to do some sort of treatment. So I took the risk and did ozone treatment in Cyprus. Now, when I look back now, I didn't read probably enough, but again, hindsight's a wonderful thing. And I did the ozone, and then the ozone made me a lot worse. So then after the ozone, I started having seizures, and I just was in agony, and I was just so ill. And then since then, I've been quite scared to do any other like severe treatment. So for the last 3 years, I've just been kind of working on all the things holistically that I know and I learned in the first time, and diet, and just trying to build up my immune system, treating parasites with a naturopath. I've done some art. And yeah, that's pretty much where I am now. My worst symptoms now is definitely chronic pain and brain issues, neurological issues.
Okay, thanks, Kirk. Emma, can you introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about your journey as well?
How's it going?
Hi, so I was like just really healthy child, and then I think when I was 11 I went to Florida on holiday, and before I went on holiday I was like quite clever, and I was doing my GCSEs a year early, and I was playing chess for England, and just had a really like high functioning brain, never any health problems. And after that holiday I went back to school. I couldn't read properly, I couldn't write properly, and the teachers started to notice there's something wrong with her, but we don't know what's wrong with her. How can you go from being top of the year for like 8 years in a row to like the bottom? And then basically for 10 years my health declined, and I probably saw over 150 doctors in that period, and then basically was doing like part-time college. My parents knew something was wrong, but I'd only ever remembered being sick since I was 11, so I just thought everyone felt that way. And then I went to Australia as well, which was a very big mistake. So I went to Australia in my second year of uni, and by that time I couldn't even carry a bag, so my mom had to fly to Australia with me to carry my suitcase. So that was a big sign that I was not well enough to go. But I was being told, it's in your head, you're depressed, you're anxious, you're chronic fatigued. And when someone tells you chronic fatigued, how can you take that seriously? We know fatigue as being tired, so you know, you don't take it seriously. And then I basically went to Australia. That's when I really rapidly declined. And after like 6 months, I'd had to drop out of uni, and I was in a wheelchair in Australia, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. I couldn't walk, and I had to come back to England. And I was saying at this point to my family, yeah, something is way worse than chronic fatigue. And I got to the airport, was like in a wheelchair, came home, basically couldn't go back to uni, and moved back in with my parents. Like, I'd previously been living in London, and within a year I was totally bedridden and I was paralyzed for 11 months. I couldn't even feed myself. I couldn't have any light for a year. I didn't see any light, and I didn't have any conversation because I couldn't tolerate any noise. And I think I ate about 4 or 5 food in a whole year. So I was severely ill. I was in and out of NHS hospitals because of the paralysis. And then basically they told me that I didn't have long left to live. And it was actually the NHS that told me. The GP came to our house out of hours and she said to me, you don't have much time to wait. This is what happens. People at end of life, 80 or 90 years old. By this point, I was having seizures every day. I was unconscious most of the time. And yeah, it was really bad. And they said, go to Breakspear. So I went to Breakspear, and I knew I had Lyme because I'd seen it on YouTube, and there was a girl who was being carried about just like how I was because I couldn't move. And I was like, oh my God, that's what I've got. And everyone around me was like, don't get your hopes up, but you just know. And I went to Breakspear and my tests were positive with a lot of different labs. Got diagnosed, which was like a huge relief because once you're diagnosed, then you can start treatment. And I've basically been with Breakspear like on and off for 4 years, and I'm like loads better. Like, I'm still ill, but like I'm like up talking, you know. I spend time in bed in the day. My main issues now are less neurological and less organ related and are more chronic fatigue. So yeah, like I'm a lot better, so I'm really happy. But yeah, that's it really.
Thank you. Thanks, Emma. So I think in terms of kind of predominant symptoms, I think Kirk and Emma, you've kind of covered, you know, certainly what were your predominant symptoms at the time. Hannah, can you mentioned a little bit about it, and Arlene, you've kind of touched on what Marcus experienced as well, but so people that are listening can perhaps kind of identify with the, you know, the symptoms that they might be experiencing. And you, can you tell us just briefly what your kind of predominant symptoms were, Hannah?
Yeah, well, mine started with, looking back, it was weird joint pain, and I was doing a lot of competitive running, and I thought that's just because of the running. And then 2006, I just started to get sort of gut disturbances, like my gut wasn't good. Gradually just started to feel horrible in the mornings, just like hangover, flu, malaria feeling, which kind of stretched through the whole day. I had awful insomnia, nightmares, anxiety, depression, mood swings. Literally just things just started to sweep through my body. I had memory loss, kind of dementia symptoms. Yeah, basically kind of everything that could go wrong went wrong.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I've got a list of like 35 symptoms, so I've probably
appreciate it. Yeah. It is a multi-systemic disease, and
it is
to get, but I was just wondering what those kind of key ones were for you. But thanks.
So the worst one was the chronic fatigue. Yeah, so that really came in and kind of took over everything else. And then the neurological symptoms started, and then the kind of heart issues started. So it went from chronic fatigue to sort of neuro, heart.
Thanks, Hannah. And how about for Marcus, Arlene?
And for Marcus, a lot of similar ones to what we're hearing from the panel. So the fatigue and the lethargy was definitely the worst then, and still remains. Very severe headaches in different parts of his head, low mood swings, night fevers and day sweats, the light and sound sensitivity that Emma talked about, gut upset as well, muscle twitching, panic attacks in the early days. It was just everything.
And keeping with you, I think keeping with you in a second, Arlene, but I think all of you, or I suppose it would be more accurate to say none of you were diagnosed on the NHS.
No.
Or private.
No way.
And Arlene, going to kind of predominant and key approaches to treatment, you mentioned that you've largely the traditional, as in the medicinal route. Can you speak a bit about your kind of experiences with that, and Marcus's experiences with that, and the decisions that kind of led you led you down there.
Yes. So, you know, being a lover of the NHS, having worked for them, I wanted to explore all routes there first, and I felt we did that, and then we hit that brick wall. So where do you turn then? Like some of the other panel, we had heard about Breakspear, and so we took Marcus to Breakspear, who did the initial testing, and immediately they discovered the Hashimoto's, the autoimmune thyroid problem that he had. And they also ran the other tests for Lyme. So he had treatment there, intravenous antibiotics for 4 weeks, followed up by other oral antibiotic treatments. And then we started to explore the issue of co-infections. That's those other infections that can happen often as in a tick bite. We also, at the same time, we're looking at supplements to boost the immune system, because after a number of years, your whole body's taken such a battering from these infections. So you're looking at the other things to support it as well. And then over the years, if I just give you a fast forward, I personally found doing a lot of the research very helpful from other places, such as Marty Ross's site in America, the Treat Lyme site. I find it very logical, and that appeals to me. So I did a lot of research there, and we consulted there. We attended the online webinars where you could ask questions. And then latterly, Marcus has been seeing Dr. Lambert in Dublin. So we've followed the very traditional route of antibiotics, often combination antibiotics, and supported by LDN, low-dose naltrexone, to help boost the immune system. Supplements such as curcumin and other things to lower inflammation within the body, and the other supplements such as simple things that you'll know about, like vitamin D, vitamin B, which are extremely important. So that's a quick whistle tour of
no, I appreciate that, thank you. Kirk, coming to you, you mentioned already a couple of things that you tried, you know, the ozone therapy, and that largely it was the kind of, you know, holistic route, the diet and everything that you designed that you found has made the biggest difference to you personally over the years. Is there anything else or any other types of treatment that you've taken part in that you want to share, or that you think were key? Or
yeah, I mean, I always, from a very young age, from like 8 to 9, I always had a very bad stomach. I got salmonella poisoning when I was 18. So I kind of, in my intuition, knew that antibiotics wouldn't work, but, well, not that wouldn't work, that I just wouldn't be able to stomach them, sorry. But I actually was under Dr. Lambert as well in Ireland for about 3 months, but I just couldn't handle the antibiotics. They were destroying my stomach. I couldn't get out the toilet. So I had to come off them. And then I got really bad mold illness as well on top of that. So yeah, it was, yeah, but I've done loads of things. We would be here a long time if I told you everything.
I think Emma said the same as well, you know, and I think the point that you make, and that we discussed when we met last week to just, you know, kind of talk over the meeting is, you know, what might have worked maybe for Marcus, you know, Dr. Lambert's protocol wasn't necessary for you. And Emma, I know you said when we met last week, you know, there are so many treatments I've tried, some have worked, some haven't, some you know, will work for one person and might not work for another, and unfortunately there's not kind of a one size fits all. You know, one of the questions we got sent for today was, what are the treatments for chronic Lyme? And it's almost like, well, you know, there isn't like a kind of set list to just say, because, you know, the fact is that we don't yet have a treatment that, you know, can cure every patient at, you know, all stages of disease, as far as I'm aware, you know, that treats every single symptom. You know, that's why we're trying to fund research to find better treatments for, you know, all patients at all stages of the disease, and that might be a different treatment protocol depending on the kind of symptoms that you're experiencing. But
yeah,
Emma,
and I think it's the level as well, because like when I look back, I don't think ozone is bad. I just think it was too much in a whole month, 6 days a week. Your body's getting hammered. It's very stressful.
You have to be
treatment.
a certain kind of level of health to do certain treatments.
Yeah,
which is ironic considering you're really sick.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing to balance. And Emma, you kind of blog your health journey on Instagram, don't you? And you share a lot about the kind of treatments and stuff that you're doing. I know one of the things you're doing recently is that the Perrin technique, but that you've tried, you know, a lot, and again, you have quite a holistic approach to health.
Yeah.
Are there any kind of key key kind of treatment approaches or anything that
well, I did like the typical, treat the Lyme bacteria. So I did 8 months of penicillin injections twice a week at Breakspear. Didn't notice and didn't improve with that. So that's obviously like antibiotics. And then I did 2 years of the herbal Buna protocol, which I think is partly what helped me in the beginning, but I wouldn't say it was like a big significant part of my recovery. But I found that even though I had a positive Lyme test, which a lot of people have Lyme, it might not be the Lyme bacteria itself which is making people the most sick. So that's why often we have to treat other things to help us get better. So for me personally, a big part of my recovery has been detoxing, because Lyme just is throwing toxins into your body all of the time. So you could be trying to kill the Lyme, but if you're not dealing with all the toxins, then you're not going to improve. So doing the pairing technique, type of lymphatic drainage has been a really big part of my recovery. Things like infrared saunas, ionic foot baths. For me personally, it's not effective, but a lot of people, coffee enemas. So detox has been huge. And as well, for me personally, addressing chronic viral infections, because Lyme can suppress your immune system. So if you have like EBV when you were younger, so what I had, it reactivated. So treating EBV and other viruses with a combination of pharmaceuticals at Breakspear and herbs, and as well like addressing structural things, like I'd been in a car crash, a ski accident, and all those symptoms mimics Lyme. So it's been hard to pinpoint what's causing what, but treating that has helped a lot. Things like detoxing heavy metals, because I got sick after the vaccine. I had Lyme, and then the vaccine I got worse, and the car accident got worse. So it was like going back and looking at every point where I got worse, and then treating
what that might have triggered.
Separately. And as well, like Kirk said, mold is a huge thing for people with Lyme, because it suppresses your immune system if you're living in mold, and the Lyme thrives. So for a big part of me, my recovery has been detoxing from living in a moldy place as well. So a lot of different things. Some things helped, some things didn't, but it's just trial and error that you have to try to see. And there's no guarantees either.
It is a scary thing, and not an endless pot of money either. And coming to you on treatment, because you, like I say, you designed your kind of own protocol. I know you have kind of a wealth of information about it, and I'm sure you could talk about it for days, but could you just give us like a condensed kind of version of the key principles to your kind of approach to treatment?
I think the key for me was getting really good personalized testing, which was accurate and was able to identify what I needed to work on. So following on from what Emma said, I had the private PCR test, and then I backed that up with bioresonance testing and Dr. Klinghardt art muscle testing. And the muscle testing and the bioresonance, basically I had about 4 A4 pages of things wrong with me. So I had mold, yeast, parasites, I had 3 strains of Lyme, 6 co-infections, 5 active viruses. My body was kind of shot to pieces really, and my digestive system was inflamed. And so once I kind of absorbed all that, luckily I had a really good naturopath that knew about Lyme, but she'd never treated it before, because I was in Australia, which is in a country where they say that Lyme doesn't exist. And so nobody treats it or mentions it, or it's quite a taboo subject there. So I was kind of in a country that doesn't believe it exists, and with people that never heard of it. So I did a lot of research, and Dr. Klinghardt's name popped up quite a lot, and Dr. McCullough, Dr. Axe, like lots of really good natural health people. So I did 3 months research. I didn't want to be pushed into a certain protocol. So I thought, I've been ill for 6 years, what's a few more months? So I did 3 months research and just found all the most successful Lyme treatments, spoke to Lyme patients, looked in forums, did research, and came together with a picture that's sort of natural and holistic in stages was a good idea. So I did lots of research, put it all together on a big A3 bit of paper, came up with a kind of 4-stage plan, because I couldn't afford to see Dr. Klinghardt and I was too ill to travel. So simplified his approach into 4 stages, which was basically stage detox, personalized nutrition for Lyme, removing Lyme and co-infections, and then rebalancing my body and my immune system, and also doing like mind and soul work as well. So doing that systematically, and like Emma was saying, I removed lots of toxins, stressors, blocks to healing for a few months before I even attempted to tackle the Lyme and co-infections. And I think that's why my treatment was so successful, because I did it in stages, and it was like I'm peeling an onion in layers. So,
Yeah.
and that's worked brilliantly. Yeah.
Thank you. So guys, I'm keen to get to the questions, because I know we had quite a lot coming in, and you know, I know people are keen to hear from you. So one of our first questions was about, have any of you tried biomagnetic pair therapy with any success?
Yes, I have.
With
Well, I do it, but I haven't noticed any difference yet.
I think it's a good supportive treatment. So for me personally, I don't think that one treatment can get someone with chronic Lyme better. It takes a combination. So I found like the biomagnetic pair therapy, since I've been doing it, my immune system was stronger and I have had more energy. So I think that it is a good support, but I don't think that it can cure and get rid of Lyme out of your body, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. They had a question, with the discovery of long COVID and the setup of specialist clinics to help sufferers, do you think that this will help or hinder sufferers of chronic Lyme getting suitable advice for treatment? We touched on this the other day, didn't we, when we were discussing about you know, people who are suffering long COVID and developing chronic fatigue symptoms, and we kind of generally agreed that it was a positive thing. You know, they're funding more research into ME and long COVID off the back of that. What's your guys' feeling on that?
Well, I think the research into it is good, potentially for, you know, chronic conditions, but I think at the moment there isn't the understanding in the medical world about multi-systemic conditions like Lyme disease. So I think, like we've seen, they've tried to introduce things like graded exercise therapy for the long haul COVID patients, and we know that that doesn't work for Lyme disease patients. Some people it might, but most it doesn't, you know, with chronic fatigue. And people with ME and chronic fatigue syndrome, the graded exercise has actually made a lot of people much worse. So I think we need the research first, which will help the whole chronic illness community, and then get the understanding before trying to do treatment protocols.
Yeah.
My own feeling is we should use this opportunity of long COVID and those people who are sadly suffering from it to as a platform to talk about how those with chronic Lyme or suffering the symptoms have not been believed in the past. That's been one of the biggest issues I think that Lyme patients find, and my son would be one of them, saying that was the thing that got him down the most, was nobody believed him. And I think that issue now is, if people, and I'm talking about the NHS, the public, everyone, if they can now believe that long COVID exists and it happens, why can't we broaden that discussion to talk about these other conditions that are very similar?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's just, yeah, I mean, probably everyone feels similar that, I mean, we, not that we want sympathy, we just want to be understood. And like, you know, we've been suffering for all these years and we still don't get understood. And then, you know, if you've got long COVID, you get so understood so quickly. And do you know what I mean? So hopefully yes for the Lyme thing, but not to be pessimistic. I don't think it will change it, to be honest.
I agree.
I think that, and I'm hopeful that it will. I don't know to what extent, but I feel like the medical community, you know, this you know, whole group of doctors writing letters to Parliament, you know, that are just experiencing it themselves, because COVID is a more tangible thing to put it to. If research can look into the cause of like post-viral, you know, there's no reason why some of those learnings can't be applied, but I guess the proof will be in the pudding.
I think that the same treatments can work, because a lot of people that I'm in contact with post-COVID are doing the same treatments as me and they're improving, but I don't think that means that NHS are going to adopt those treatments.
And going back to, we had a mold related question. I know a couple of you guys have mentioned that already. Someone asked whether anyone on the panel had a positive Marcon's test, and if so, how did you treat it? Was it successful, and is retesting the only way to know if it was successful? Those of you that spoke about mold, did you have that kind of test, or
did they say mycotoxin test?
It said Marcon's, but I don't know if that's like an abbreviation that I'm just not familiar with.
No, I didn't have that down. I've heard.
I think maybe they mean mycotoxins. It's like
maybe they're just using that as like a
mycotoxin are what they lay on the lungs, isn't it, which causes the mold.
Yeah. So the Marcon's I think it's a type of testing. Marcon's, I've heard of it. I think it's a type of test.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of treating it, is like remediation of the mold. There's somebody called Jeff from Building Forensics, and he's really good at finding where it is in your home and telling you what to do to remediate it. So you have to address the home, where it's coming from, but also get the toxins out of your body.
And how are the ways that you did that, Emma?
Infrared saunas is the main way, which you can just buy like off Amazon. Furzone, I think, is the company that most people in the UK use, and taking things like binders, so zeolite, charcoal, chlorella, cholestyramine, but that's prescription, so you'd have to get that from Breakthrough or a doctor. But the other things you can self-treat, glutathione as well.
Yeah, and in terms of the test, like, I mean, when I was suffering from mold, it's like, you know, your whole body's just on fire. My brain felt like it was being eaten. Like I couldn't even work out how to get to the bus stop down the road. It was that bad. So I didn't need to get tested. I think as soon as I did a bit of research and I realised that the house I was in was mouldy.
And as well, I think it's quite an obvious thing. If people are treating Lyme and they're not getting better, then you have to think, why are you not getting better? Because there's something else causing you to be ill. And often I see like it is mold, and then people go and they test the mycotoxins. They find out, oh, I've got loads of mycotoxins. They detox the mycotoxins like I did, and then the health improves.
Yeah, just to add a bit of hope, I tested positive for mold with the bioresonance testing and the ARC testing as well. I was actually living in tropical Darwin, which gets extremely moldy during the wet season, and my symptoms really flared the first wet season I was there, but I was too ill to come home, and I wanted to stay there because there's good naturopaths, and I actually recovered in Darwin, which is incredibly moldy. So I think because I reduced the toxic load on my body, it was able to deal with the mold better. So I think you can, you know, detox, remove some blocks to healing, so your body can then start to deal with things like mold better. So it is possible.
Yeah, thank you. Moving on to the next question. Have any of the panel had oral surgery to treat bone or under the gum infections? You know, were you treated in the UK or Europe for this? There's questions. They had quite a lot of questions around this, but you know, whether you kind of herxed whilst you were on it, if you were able to travel home afterwards, whether you've had root canals or ozone in the tooth socket. Emma, I know you've done some blogs and posts about dental. Can you?
Yeah, so I think that what I had mercury amalgam fillings. If you have mercury fillings, that the mercury, it leaks into your body, suppress your immune system and make things like Lyme thrive. So a lot of patients with Lyme, they get their mercury removed when they're well enough. For me, it alleviated so many of my brain neurological neuropathy in my face. I made a significant improvement after that, but whilst I was getting them removed, with a biological dentist, I got it done with NDU clinic in London. A normal dentist, they don't use any protection, so when they're pulling out the mercury, it can actually make more go in your body, so you want to go to a biological dentist. And then they discovered my wisdom teeth were all four infected, and if you have infected teeth, they can be infected with the Lyme viruses, all kinds of junk toxins, so it is recommended to get them removed. I had them removed, but I wasn't on a great follow-up protocol at the time, and it removed a lot of my symptoms. I had autoimmune encephalitis and my brain was on fire all the time, and after that it improved, but it didn't heal properly. So now I have 4 basically gaping holes in my jawbone because the bone didn't grow back. So next year I have to have like the cavitation surgery, which I think they're talking about. So they'll open up the bone and they'll clear out all the junk, and I'll be making sure like to work with a practitioner who can do pre-surgery prep and post-surgery prep. But it's not recommended to do that if you're not strong and if you can't heal properly, because otherwise it won't heal and you'd have to get it done again. But the person that I recommend is Helena at Elite Dental Clinic in Marlow, because she has the most experience, I feel personally, with very complex chronic cases. Because I went to see her recently and she said, I would never have done that to you 2 years ago. I wouldn't even do it now because you're not well enough, which made me realize, okay, she knows what she's doing. But yeah, I think dental is a huge part of this, and it's only going to become more and more well known.
Thank you. And next question, does anyone on the panel have any experience of Rife machines?
Yeah, I've got one. Yeah, I've got one.
Rife machines.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't do that.
Kirk, you did it, right? It helped.
I did Bioresonance at first, the very first treatments I did, and that was like a game changer for me. But then when I came back from Australia, I tried to do it again, and it was just wouldn't do anything. I think I was way too ill. And then I bought, about a year after that, I bought, what's that? God, I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, I bought one and I sold it. And then I bought another one. I met a guy, a very smart guy, who has been healing lots of people with a South African model of a Rife machine. So I bought that one. And I've actually stopped doing it the last few months because I don't know, it just wasn't, I didn't feel like I was getting better again, which is frustrating. But yeah, so.
I think there's a clinic in Hull called the Well One Clinic, and they use a combination of antibiotics with Rife. And I've got some friends that went there, and if you're pretty strong and you can handle it, like they have seen success. But I think that if you're quite sick and you try and use Rife, because I went to see a Rife practitioner with a friend and they said they wouldn't be trying to kill the Lyme with the Rife because it's too strong, but it's really good for parasites and viruses.
Yeah, I think because a Rife is a type of bioresonance machine, and I think there's certain types of machines, like the ones I used, you could do a program for 3 hours at home, but a Rife machine I think is quite intense. But people only do it for sort of minutes and sometimes seconds with Rife. So I like the sort of slower, steadier bioresonance machines myself. I think they can work quite well, much less impact on the body in one go.
Thanks, Hannah. One of the questions was, has the panel found that once treated, recovery was linear, or did they experience contrasting up and downs? And could these be extreme from 1 week to the next or over a period of months? I think I could probably know the answer to this question, but Arlene, do you want to speak about from Marcus's experience, has it kind of continued as a slow trajectory, or has there been lots of ups and downs, and do they happen quite quickly, or are they gradual?
It's an interesting one, because if you asked Marcus, he would give a very different answer to me. So I'm watching him, from outside of it, and what I saw was there was very definitely a trajectory of improvement after the IV antibiotics, particularly before that, after sorting the Hashimoto's autoimmune thyroid problem. And then I saw a leveling off, and then I suppose the disappointment of not getting well, that all accompanies it as well, doesn't it? And so from there on, it's like, well, what's still the problem? What's still there? And so the combination antibiotics for him were very helpful. That seemed to address things like the Babesia, the Bartonella, the Lyme infection he had, and some of the other infections that were there. So it needed to be that multi-pronged attack. He was very low in vitamin D. That helped him to feel a bit better in himself. So I saw over these initial 2 years of treatment, I saw a lot of those symptoms disappear. The light, the noise sensitivity, the headaches disappeared, the day, the night sweats disappeared. But his perception is he didn't really get any better. But I could see that there were so many symptoms that were disappearing. We just didn't manage, and still haven't managed, to break through the fatigue. And that's what makes the difference between living life to the full and not really.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Arlene. Was there anything else that any of you others wanted to add about the kind of recovery?
I think just don't expect to just get better and better and better and better and better. I think, like, overall, I think for a lot of people, the trajectory is generally up, but that up is can be quite rocky, and kind of to have realistic expectations, maybe not so much with acute Lyme, but with chronic Lyme, definitely, especially if there's like viruses, co-infections, parasites, dental mold, you know, and even with treatment, you can get worse before you get better. So
yeah, and I think just go slowly is the biggest. I think if I look back, I wanted to get better so quickly. I just went full in on everything, and yeah, be patient.
Yeah, I think sometimes less is more when treating Lyme, and you need to remember that generally your body, it can take 2 weeks for what you do to take full effect. So if you're doing something every single day, you know, that might be taxing the body a little bit too much. So yeah, like Kirk says, I did a bit too much at the start, and I wish I'd just started with my kind of streamlined protocol, which was much simpler than what I started with and worked much better.
Thanks, guys. I am mindful of the time, but I know we've got quite a lot of questions and some coming in. So if you guys
Don't worry.
are okay
for me,
we'll try.
Yeah,
thank you. So someone else has asked, how important were parasites and heavy metals in your treatment? So Kirk, I know you mentioned that you're about to start, or you've not long started parasite treatment.
Yeah, I'm on day 2 now. So I'm doing it. Well, I'm eating my apple.
Too early to tell.
You see, I'm on this. Yeah, so I'm on day 2 of a 6-week cleanse. So yeah, I'll let you know. I have treated parasites with a clean heart practitioner called Rhonda Kingston, but I just couldn't carry on. She was treating me, but the protocols were so expensive. I just couldn't afford it. But when she did the art, she found so much information of parasites in my stomach. So I was on Mimosa pudica, which is apparently one of the best ones. I think it's called like Para 1.
That's micro formulas. Yeah, Para 1, Para 2, they do.
Yeah. So and there's so I was treating them, but I couldn't carry on the full protocol. So now I've just I'm breaking out into sections. So now I'm just going to focus on parasites for 6 weeks, and just focus on that, and then I'll start doing the next thing, then treat the Lyme, then do it. Yeah, I'm trying to break it down instead of doing everything at once.
The problem with the parasites as well is the testing. So you could go to a functional medicine doctor like Breakspear or a holistic health practitioner, and they do stool tests, but parasites won't. Well, it's very rare, but most of the time they won't come out in the stool test. They're parasites. They want to live off you. They don't want to leave your body. So a lot of the time we're told, oh, you don't have parasites. And I was told that for the first 3 years of treatment. And then I went to see a different practitioner. I did art as well. And they believed that the main reason I still have chronic fatigue is actually parasites. So I think the testing is not accurate, and everyone should be addressing parasites because it's a major root cause, especially of chronic fatigue. So I'm kind of in the same position as Kirk with treating it now, but I wish I'd have done it a lot sooner.
What was that? Sorry, Hannah.
Sorry to interrupt there, Emma. I agree with the parasites, and I think the biofilm is a key thing that people miss as well, because parasites and pathogens can cover themselves in a slimy film, so they're not detected by the immune system. So I worked on biofilm first, and then I worked on parasites, and then I worked on heavy metals and mold. So I think the parasites was a key thing for me, because I'd been traveling a lot, been to, America, Ecuador, Africa. So probably picked up all sorts. So yeah, I think it's important to clear stuff out first that's kind of been uninvited.
And a lot of people who had vaccines, like for me personally, all my health got worse after the HPV jab. And I know a lot of people at Breakspear, the same thing happened. And the reason is because they contain aluminium. So detoxing aluminium with like saunas, foot baths, zeolite, and detoxing mercury, if you've had fillings, like it can take such a weight off your immune system. So then your body is more likely to be able to fight the Lyme.
Okay, thanks guys. One of the questions that came in live tonight, so the attendee makes an observation that there are so many things to consider with Lyme. There's Lyme co-infections, heavy metals, mold, thyroid issues. and they were saying, you know, how do we know what and where to get accurate testing from? And that's similar to another question that's come about, you know, how do you get tested for these autoimmune diseases that Lyme patients can end up getting? I guess it's about, I guess, you know, they're asking where, you know, there are so many like places that you can get tested online, you know, how do you, what are kind of the hallmark, what should people be looking for in terms of, you know, a kind of reliable source of testing, you know, so they don't just go to anywhere. I don't know if you specifically have got an input on that, Arlene, given your kind of position, if you can give some advice from your, you know, your pharmacist, you know, health kind of professional type opinion.
Sure, happy to try and give some of the answer anyway. So if we deal with the thyroid issue, the autoimmune issues, the GP should be able to help most patients by being able to do these tests. Now, the issue here is if we take the thyroid one, the autoimmune thyroiditis, it doesn't show up in typical thyroid tests that would be done at the GP surgery. So you'd have to have the conversation about asking them to do the thyroid antibody test. And that's a very particular one, and it needs to be specially ordered, but it can be done through the GP.
Are they the T3 and T4 or
and TSH,
yeah.
These are typical ones, but they do not show up Hashimoto's or autoimmune thyroiditis. I speak from experience because Marcus had them tested for these 3 years and nothing was amiss. But actually, when he had the thyroid antibody test done, we did it through Breakspear, but now I know the GP can do it. You just have to ask for it and give a reason why that would show up if that's there. Medichecks and some of the other private tests that you can arrange to have done, they can also check for those if you have the funds and you're able to pay for those. The best thing, if you have the funds to do it, is probably to see a functional doctor who would look at all of those things. They would advise on how to have testing for mold, how to have testing for heavy metals, how to have testing for things
kind
like,
of look after the whole package, and you know that obviously they'll be used, as long as you're using a reputable functional practitioner that has all the kind of recommended qualifications, then they will be using labs that are accredited in terms of testing. And
absolutely right, absolutely right. You will probably be unlikely to find it in the NHS, so you're probably looking privately. But you're right, Rosie, it should be people who are professionally qualified and regulated for your own peace of mind if you're going to go that route.
One of the questions someone's asked, we had a couple of questions about this actually, about whether acupuncture can be helpful specifically for kind of neurological symptoms. Do any of you have any experience in acupuncture for symptoms of Lyme?
Yeah.
Kirk, if you want to pop in first.
Yeah, I think similar to, for me, there was just a short pain relief for me. But I never did it I never did it like every week for a year, for instance. So maybe that's why. But yeah, they helped for like maybe the day after and then kind of back to normal. So I never kind of pursued it. But what I would say is make sure you find an acupuncture practitioner who understands and treats chronic illness, because there's, you know, just going into the Chinese, you know, the herbal inn or whatever, they're very, very different to getting someone that understands where to put the needles, the exact point, like for chronic illness, and really understands that how to treat your specific condition, because it's not as simple as just sticking needles in and that sort of thing. I think there's a lot of people that don't do it properly.
Yeah, sure. And Hannah,
to be like careful that you don't, like, because for me, like I did it twice, it made me so much worse. If you're super toxic and you have loads of infections and the acupuncture opens up all these pathways, it just floods your system with all the toxins and infections, and you can get way more sick. So I think like you have to try it, and if you get worse, like I probably wouldn't pursue with it further. But like Kirk said, at some point it can be like supportive.
And sorry, Hannah, did you have any experience as well? I thought I might have seen you.
Yeah, in Australia, when I was trying to work out what was wrong with me, I did have regular weekly acupuncture sessions with a Chinese medicine herbalist and practitioner, and I think that kind of helped me function. I just found it quite soothing, and then I swapped to lymphatic massage once I found out it was Lyme and what I was dealing with, and I realised I was so full of toxins. I found that more beneficial to do lymphatic massage.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. Someone's asked here what the difference is between bioresonance and biomagnetism. It's not something I know.
Well, bioresonance it's through a machine, so it works on biofrequencies, so it works on natural frequencies in the body, and it's basically through a machine that can send out and detect those biofrequencies in the body. And biomagnetic pairs uses pairs of magnets placed on different sort of diametric areas of the body. So one is kind of frequency, and one is magnets, basically.
Are they used to treat different things or different kind of key symptoms, or?
Both can be used for similar things. So yeah, they can be used for like sort of pain relief and therapy, or more targeting of killing off things. The bioresonance is more kind of sending in frequencies to kill off things. And the biomagnetic pairs uses pH, so it balances the body's pH, so it sort of clears things and just rebalances the body using the magnets.
Okay, thank you. Kirk, we have a question for you about the diet. The person said they just caught the end of what you were saying about that, and they just wondered what was that? No sugar, no dairy. I think you're quite. I mean, you work as a chef, don't you? Which is amazing that you've managed to kind of hold down this career. Given how and well you are. But I know you do a lot about plant-based cooking as well, don't you? Is that basically what you try to kind of like a clean living, so less kind of meat, dairy, less sugar, that kind of thing?
Yeah, of course. That's how I set up my business, because when I first decided to get a lot better before I went to Australia the second time, it was incredible. Just, I think maybe because, I mean, I don't know if many of you know, but as a chef working in very high intense kitchens, we do not look after ourselves. We live off a few coffees a day, and we work 18, 19, 20 hours a day. We have 4 or 5 hours sleep, and it's very, very stressful. So when I stopped working and started to put all this goodness into my body was just like, wow. And I could almost feel my body like going, like almost, it was helping it. I could feel it healing almost. I'd never done green juices before in my life. I've never not had sugar since I was born. I never understood all the things that I learned. So basically that's how I created my business. So the way it's inspired by the change of my diet and my lifestyle.
Thanks, Kirk.
The diet's so personal for me.
Yeah,
I don't think you can ever say do this diet. I'll never say that, because you've got to listen to your own body. And organic meat and organic fish for some people is amazing, and so it's so tricky.
Yeah, I think the only good diet for Lyme is a really truly personalized diet.
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. I know there's more questions, but I'm really concerned about time, and I know some of you are still kind of recovering and still unwell, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. Maybe this is something that we need to revisit. Maybe there needs to be a patient panel discussion mark 2 to kind of go through all of the questions that everyone's had. The one thing that I would like to just kind of end on is around the discussion that we've had about recovery and hope. We mentioned about this during our catch up last week when we talked about the event, and Emma, you were saying, so many people say to me, do people with Lyme ever get better? Because from their experience of you obviously having this kind of long battle with Lyme, and if you were to go on to Facebook forums or online, you're constantly seeing about these people who are chronically ill, they've given up hope of ever being cured. But you yourself have said, that I know hundreds of people that have got better, but when they do, that that's for them, they like to kind of leave that behind and live their life, so you're not seeing them being alone. And I think it's true to make that so
I think that I've met over the last 4 years, I would probably say close to 1,000 Lyme patients at Breakspear, and then like in touch with a lot through Instagram, and loads of them are better. Like people I've made really good friends with, like they're having kids, they're like married, they're working, they're living full lives. But think about it, when you're better, you're not going to be on a Lyme forum posting about like your health, you're going to be off living your life. So I think, yeah, it's absolutely possible to get better. I personally met 2 people that Breakspear said who were as ill as I was, and they were also told they probably didn't have long left to live, and they are actually fully recovered now. So I think there is definitely hope. It's just not an easy battle. So yeah.
And anything else that any of you would like to kind of put in about hope, or you know, Arlene, I know, you know, in terms of you having hope both for your son, but keeping hope for him as, you know, as a family member and support. Is there anything you would want to add on that kind of note?
Thanks for that chance. I did ask him, I said, you know, what was the one single thing, Marcus, that you think that I was able to do? And apart from all the things you told me I did wrong, he said to me, it was the point where you started to believe I was really ill. He said, because the initial years when he was a teenager, we just labelled him the lazy boy, you know, come on, do more, get out more, try harder. And so I think if there's a single thing to say, it's probably believe the person that you love, that you support, that you're with, you know, believe them that they're ill, and somehow try and get that message across to those that are, you know, providing healthcare in any shape or form. So believing them is a single most important thing. And the other thing I would say is don't give up. You know, if you're supporting someone or helping someone, reassure them that you won't give up, because I think it's important to have hope when these, you know, dark days come, that things will get better. And as a pharmacist, if I can put a final wee point on, there are new treatments evolving all the time. There's research going on and developments going on that we know nothing about. So I am personally very optimistic about the future, that there will be more types of treatments and approaches that will be helpful to all of us.
Thank you, Arlene. And thank you guys so much. I know, you know, it's really kind of taxing and, you know, difficult emotionally and physically for you guys to kind of all be here and switched on. And thank you for everybody that's tuned in today and put in your comments. I've seen the chat function going so well. I've put a note in there on the chat function. You know, we're more than happy to host these events for free. But if you have enjoyed it, if you found it interesting, if you found it useful, and you might be willing to make a small donation to our charity's research fund. Obviously we're trying to support patients like you guys and fund research to find better treatments so that everyone can get treated and cured on the NHS. You know, it's going to be a long road, but you know, we're starting, and our first research program starts, well, our applications are open, and we're hoping to start funding from late spring, early summer. So if you're able to give a donation of any size, we'd be very, very grateful, but appreciate, you know, not everyone is in the position to do so. But yeah, just a big thank you for everyone to come along. Questions, I'm sorry for anything that we weren't able to ask. Like I say, maybe we'll make this, you know, something that's kind of relatively regular, so we can get all of the questions and just give people the support and the hope and the information that is sometimes difficult to get in one place like this. So yeah, Arlene, Emma, Kirk, Hannah, thank you so much for taking part. I really appreciate it. Go and rest, relax, do whatever you need to do. And to everyone that's tuned in, and say thanks again for coming, and just take care, everybody. Take care and stay safe.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.